Good morning. We'll call the meeting to order this morning, and the invocation, Supervisor Bishop, and Pledge of Allegiance, Supervisor Angus, please. Please rise.
Heavenly Father, we come before you today to give you honor and praise. We thank you for our great country, and we ask your divine wisdom for all of our leaders here today. May we be given the wisdom and courage in the decisions that we make. We ask that you guide and direct our meeting so that it's full of productivity and respect for one another. We pray these things in your mighty name. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A couple more.
The last minute, we're good.
All set? All right. The Board of Supervisors may, by motion, recess into executive session to receive legal advice from the board's attorney on any item contained in this agenda pursuant to the Arizona Revised Statutes. At this point, I'd like to call for motion action to call for an executive session to be held on July the 2nd, 2018 at 9 a.m. for the discussion consultation with legal counsel in accordance with the Arizona Revised Statutes.
So moved.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. On to official business. Discussion of contemplated litigation or pending claims. Mr. Esplin.
Nothing to report to the board, thank you.
Thank you. Committee reports. Start to my left, Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had our meeting of the Lake Havasu Metropolitan Planning Organization, and we adopted the bicycle pedestrian implementation plan. That was all.
Thank you. Supervisor Bishop?
Well, I attended the water meeting with our state legislators along with most of the other supervisors here, so I think we're all aware of what happened there, and I think it was very good that the legislators took the time to come to Mojave County and hear our voices, and I think the auditorium was completely full with people standing in the back, and somewhere between 50 and 75 people got up and gave public testimonies, so that was very impressive, I think, to our legislators, and I think it sent back a message to Phoenix.
Thank you. Supervisor Angus?
Nothing this morning.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Thank you. I'd like to thank everybody that participated in the, whether you were here physically or you were supporting us at the legislative meeting. I think that the people that spoke from their heart gave the legislature something to think about in terms of what's important to us and the future of our county. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you. And I'd like to just give a small report on the actions taken by the Central Arizona Project several weeks ago, unanimously denying the request for the transfer of water from the Colorado River water system to the Central Arizona area. And it's an interesting situation. When we first started out, we only had 2 of the 15 votes. And as time progressed and more meetings went on, the more doubt that we were able to instill in those folks. So ending up with a unanimous decision and staff recommending that they not approve it was, I feel, a great accomplishment for Mojave County. So with that, that's the end of my report.
Chairman Watson, may I say something?
Certainly.
I want to reiterate how unbelievably important that was, what you just said, and how hard. And I want to take this opportunity to thank you, Chairman Watson, Supervisor Wakimoto, and Mike Hendricks, because I know how hard he worked on it too. It was a lot of work, a lot of travel, a lot of, bending arms and just telling people, never giving up. So thank you very much for never giving up.
You're quite welcome. Thank you. It was our pleasure.
Thank you.
County Manager Report, Mr. Hendricks.
I have no report today, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Approval of the May 15th Board of Supervisors Budget Workshop meetings.
Motion to approve?
A motion and a second. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Now we are on to call to the public. Those wishing to address the board at the call of the public may, regarding matters not on the board agenda, must fill out and submit to the clerk a call to the public request to speak form. They are located in the back of the room, and this must be done prior to the meeting. Action taken as a result of the public comments will be limited to responding to criticism, referral to staff, or placing a matter on a future agenda. Comments are restricted to items not on the regular agenda, with the exception of the consent agenda, and must relate to matters within the jurisdiction of this board. This morning I have 3 folks that would like to speak. Katie Manning.
Good morning, Supervisors.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Katie Manning, 3941 East Ames Avenue, here in Kingman. I want to thank every single employee of the county that has worked on this water issue. I would like to thank the supervisors. I would like to thank the homeowners, the renters, everyone that spoke. This room was absolutely packed, and I had to leave early. But Mr. Hendricks, your report, when you were giving it and watching all the legislators, they had an ear to everything you said. And I would love to see your report put in the Daily Miner word for word, stat for stat. It's a real eye-opener. And keep up the good work, and we'll just keep going forward to keep the water where it belongs. Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you, Ms. Manning. Ms. Jennifer Jones Esposito.
Jennifer Jones Esposito, candidate for the Arizona House, 3211 East Snavely Avenue, Kingman. First, I would like to address the water meeting. My husband, who was there with me and did not speak, wanted me to point out that on a very hot day when we were all gathered on such an important event, he thought it was a bit oppressive that people's drinks were being confiscated or being moved outside, and that on such a hot day talking about water, apparently the only thing we could have in the building was water. But there were people who had cups that you couldn't see what was in them, or people who had brought some other drink in sealed bottles with closed lids, and they were all asked to take their drinks outside. And it was a very long meeting. I was only there for the first 2 hours. I had another appointment. But he asked me just to bring that up because he was kind of stunned about it, that we can bring in our guns but not our drinks. There, I said it. My husband will be happy with me now. The other issue that I'd like to bring up is one that I would have liked to bring up last time, but I didn't have the time. Other things were more pressing. Is Shinnerump Avenue in Golden Valley was re-top sealed from basically Oatman Highway to Aztec and then all the way up Aztec. Now, I drive this fairly frequently, and that really wasn't necessary. I mean, I'm always glad to see roads being worked on. However, now I have to wonder how much more money and man hours will be spent to put new stripes across the new top seal on a stretch of road that was in pretty good condition when there are so many other roads that are not in as good a condition as that was. The real crisis is Shinnerump from Aztec to Estrella. As I brought up before, it's a public safety issue. It keeps washing out. And there's no real issue as far as the wash itself because, you know, Chino is paved or chip sealed or whatever on the north side, but on the south side, it's very, very difficult after a monsoon rain for first responders to get out. I think one time a fire truck got stuck out there in the wash, and the wash section is not that big, so there's no excuse that we can't do it because of the wash. Even if you did it up to the edge of the wash and the other side of the wash, Public Works would only have to go through and redo a tiny section rather than have to grade and grade and grade a main corridor for transportation for the residents of Golden Valley. The washboarding becomes so severe, it damages people's vehicle. It's actually damaged 2 of my vehicles, and the idea that I should just get a 4-wheel drive or something, it damaged the 4-wheel drive. It gets so bad, you can't even imagine. I'd appreciate it if you'd all drive it. Thank you.
Thank you. Arthur Garnica?
My name is Arthur Garnica. I live at 3902 East Packard, Kingman, Arizona. And I just want to know about this Carl Hayes illegally being on our board. He don't have to state where he lives, but I come to your meetings, I got to tell you exactly where I live, my address, and all that stuff, and he gets away with it. And another thing I want to bring up is how Gene Bishop put on Facebook about Mike Collins' little article about the chief leaving us in a debt over $1 million. Now let's think about it. How did the fire chief leave us in debt, just like you guys' board? They bring you, they come to you, they make a suggestion, you guys vote on it to where the money goes and have to do it or not. So it's pretty much slander against the chief, Wayne Etter, because he can't leave us in debt. And another thing is, Mike Collins, they keep slandering Patty Lewis when they did a recall on Patty Lewis, and the lady was saying that Patty Lewis was hiding money, which was not true. And then my main thing is, I guess it goes to Ryan Espin. You advised Buster Johnson that I couldn't speak, but then now you let me speak again. Because I talked to Buster Johnson, I came to him and approached him and talked to him like, it wasn't nothing personal about me filing an AG complaint against him because he wouldn't let me speak when I just seen Gene Bishop look at him like, oh, telling him something. But he told me that he was advised
Mr. Garnica, you're speaking at my pleasure. I'm the chairman.
Okay, well, Ryan, all right, so I was not allowed to speak when you weren't here, sir. They stopped me from speaking. But now that you're back, I'm allowed to speak again. But it was advised from Ryan Esplin that not to let me speak at the other meeting. But it's on, see, the county, my thing is, I want someone to do something about Carl Hayes because he called me an arsonist. I got the paperwork. He said he fired the fire chief for illegally, or for, he fired the fire chief for lying. When I got the documentation from the fire investigator where Carl Hayes said, oh yeah, well I did say Arthur Garnica was a suspect and this and that, and he said several firefighters, but when it came down to it, it was one firefighter, and the firefighter said that he never said that I was an arsonist, that I just drove by, and then I said something out the window. He goes, what did he say? He goes, go get a job. I said that to Tim Keene that was standing on the side of the road. I seen a bunch of firefighters standing on the side of the road. I ain't seen no smoke, no fire, but I was just messing around saying, go get a real job instead of just standing around. So they turned that into, I was the arsonist. And then Jim Bailey and Mike Collins and them have been making complaints to the sheriffs that I'm stalking, harassing them. And I got video of Jim Bailey pulling up behind me when I'm paying my car insurance, and I took a video of him saying they're accusing me of stalking and harassing. And then I brought it to the sheriff's officer and showed him that he was behind me. So we got a legal board member on there, and he used our board to get onto the airport authority board, and I don't think it's right because he's not a resident of our district, so he shouldn't have been on our board, and I don't think he should be on the airport board either. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. That concludes the call of the public. And now we will have a presentation by Mr. Craig Sullivan, from Executive Director from the County Supervisors Association. Good morning, Craig.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Thank you for bringing up your entourage.
Well, I always have to go with security, as you know, Mr.
There you
Chairman.
go.
And so I have with me Vanessa Shaw and Robin Hilliard. And we had a really lovely drive coming up this morning, and it's a pleasure to visit with all of you today. And Mr. Chairman, I'm very grateful that you're giving me this time. Mr. Chairman, members, what we'd like to do is report out on the activities of the County Supervisors Association over the last year. As you know, you all serve on our board of directors, and you set the direction for the association, and our job is to implement that. And I think as we go through this PowerPoint, you'll find that the organization did a very good job pursuing its objectives as it was set by the board. And I want to share with you that that's really a testament to the leadership that all of you have provided for our organization and the partnership that you've given us. Because, Mr. Hendricks, we always get the quality information we need out of the Mojave County staff to ensure that we're representing properly what you all care about. And so I really want to thank you all for the partnership and collaboration, because as you see the various results that I'll discuss subsequently, you all had a huge hand in that. And I just want to extend my appreciation to all of you to begin with. So we are going to go through several items. I'm not going to talk about everything in this. Please stop me if there's a bill that you want to talk about. I just want to hit some high-level points so you can see how we spent our time. The first thing I'd like to do is just talk a little bit about the association. The County Supervisors Association is a collaboration of all 15 counties. We're nonpartisan. We're really just focused on being an intergovernmental office for all 15 counties. And why does that matter? Well, it matters because there are external entities that have the ability to drive policy that impacts your ability to serve your constituents. And you all know this well. We're talking about the courts, the federal government, state agencies, the governor's office. All of them have the ability to drive policy. And we need to interface with them, both to make sure that they're not doing things that directly harm you, and when we want to solve issues, we need to take it to those folks as well. And so that's really our job, is to try to make that as efficient as possible. A couple of things that I'd like to brief you before we get to the legislative items are how we worked over the last year to strengthen our intergovernmental presence by being involved in key stakeholder groups. And here's a list for you here. But I was representing the counties on a series of committees, including the Governor's Water Augmentation Council, the Governor's Water Solutions Process, 2 committees related to juvenile corrections, the newly formed PSPRS Advisory Committee, and process improvement conversations occurring in state agencies. And so these were just stakeholder groups that I sat in on to make sure that we were able to get a county voice at the table, and that I was able to get feedback from all of you to represent your interests as well. And it's really kind of fun to work on such a diversity of interests on behalf of the counties. I did want to point out specifically the water conversation, because how we have elevated our influence in water policy has been a direct response to your desire to have all of the counties paying more attention to it. We've had many conversations over the last 2 years, and I'm just grateful for the collaboration we've had in that area. I think we've all really helped get ourselves organized for impact. And in particular, I want to extend my appreciation to your consultants over at High Ground. Patrick Cunningham has been a great partner with our association, helping advise me on how we can use the association to advance your interests, and he's just done a phenomenal job for all of you down there at the state capitol, and I want to acknowledge him publicly. And I sat in the committee meeting that occurred here last Wednesday among the throng of folks that were in this room, and I just wanted to share as well that you all deserve an enormous amount of credit for how you have driven this issue and led on behalf of your constituents. And I just want to tip my hat to you as well, because you've done a great job in that area, and it's been a great victory that you secured with CAP. And I think every lawmaker that sat at this dais last week really heard the message loud and clear. And so well done to you as well on that. And I look forward to supporting you however I can going forward on that issue. I wanted to share with you as well that we spend a lot of time as a staff trying to build our research capability. It's not often present in our advocacy, but we really believe that what drives our advocacy is high quality information. And so I wanted to highlight that for you. Over the last year, you have seen us build out our capability to get information out, both to professional staff as well as to lawmakers. And we have built out an online database that includes 73 specific data sets, time series by county, that is available to you and your professional staff to compare and contrast across counties. We've built out a 25-page county encyclopedia that's online as well that shows a lot of comparative information. And that information, in addition to informing the professional staff in the counties, informed about 55 advocacy documents that we used to represent your interests. This is something we've been building for some time, and Vanessa Fielder, coming on our team this year, really helped take it to the website, web-based platform. She had some great skills in that area. So that's all available for you to review, and we'll send those links out to you. So moving on to the legislative report itself. So, as I mentioned, a big part of what we do is monitoring the state legislature and reviewing bills that impact your interests. There were over 1,200 bills introduced. Because of the nature of counties as administrative arms of state government, we are in all manner of state statutes, and so many of these bills impacted your interests, and we used our LPC and board meetings and professional staff feedback to determine how to engage them. And Supervisor Bishop, I know you participated in our LPC this year. I just want to thank you for taking that extra time to be available to us in that capacity, and you'll see some results here related to that. Now, in terms of our budget item, when we set our agenda, the single biggest priority for the counties was to address a major budget problem. What we had out there was a crisis in the EORP system, which is the Elected Officials Retirement Plan. Several years ago, the state legislature reformed that, and the reform mechanisms that they put in place actually defunded the program massively. Some judges filed a lawsuit, and the court found that the construction for EORP was unconstitutional. So the state was going to have to fix it, and that created a threat for a major cost shift to the county. So we wanted to create a plan. How can we try to arrive at a win-win with the state, where we can get out of major cost shifts that have occurred over time, knowing that we are going to have to absorb this EORP cost shift? And is there a way to do that collaboratively with the state? We knew that we would still want to have some protections in state law, and so we went down this path with lawmakers to have this very complicated conversation about county cost shifts and EORP. What you see on the left is the handout that we used to try to condense this to brief lawmakers, and on the right you can see the major priorities. I can share with you that we were able to achieve, in whole or in part, everything that we sought to do on this list. And that was because of the work that you all did with state lawmakers. The way it breaks down for Mojave County is listed for you here. The EORP liability was going to be about close to $900,000, and the relief that was secured is in the form of relief for payments to the Department of Juvenile Corrections. That's one time. Payments to the Arizona State Hospital and Duck Pool, these are permanent. And then making a permanent allocation for the in lieu lottery appropriation, which all of you know we've been fighting for many years. And I want to share with you all of these items that were included in the state budget were very difficult to get into a very competitive budget conversation. You watched the news, you saw how competitive it was down there and how relevant the education conversation was, and that impacted all stakeholders. But I also want to share with you that of all the folks that contributed to this, Representative Regina Cobb had the most significant impact on securing these county financial relief items, not just for Mojave County, but for every county. And that's because she is a very influential member of the Appropriations Committee. She's taken the time to study these issues, and I'll tell you, it was a real joy to work with her through this legislative process, and she's got a ton of fight in her, and everything you see on here is really related to that great effort. And so I don't know if she's here today, and there she is. So thank you. I had hoped that you would. Thank you very much for that, and really for all of the counties, I want to extend my appreciation to you. Also included in the budget, and I didn't neglect to talk about it, was the HERF piece. So in addition to the general fund relief, there are new HERF dollars coming into the system. So you're going to see an increase of close to $300,000 in the next fiscal year and about $440,000 in the subsequent fiscal year. So there was a lot of good done in the budget this year because of your work with lawmakers, and of course there's still some to do going forward. This is just a breakdown by county of how it all looked. I can answer questions if you wish. What I wanted to point out is the flexibility language. You continue to have the authority to utilize resources, even those that are statutorily restricted. That has different benefit depending on the county, but I wanted to point that out. And I also wanted to identify that we do expect that in future years, you'll see some additional VLT into your general fund associated with the budget deal that they did as well. We can't score that right now, but we do think you'll see a modest amount in that area. The next slide just breaks down how all the HERF dollars came back, and these are the new dollars for each county that I described on an earlier slide. Let me move on to just the bills that we worked on. When we go to the legislature, our focus is just what do bills mean for your ability to respond to your constituents? That's the lens we use, and the way we evaluate that is through the input we get from your staff. And so you have a significant influence on what our agenda is as it relates to bills in the process. We do take a package of bills down to the Capitol. Here's the list that we introduced. 5 of them were signed into law. The 3 related to the budget, those were not signed into law, but they served as critical vehicles to get the message out about financial relief. The duck pool piece and the committed youth piece, those are both in the budget. Though the bills didn't pass, they're in the budget. And the juvenile dependency proceedings issue, which was important to Mojave County, really helped us build the case for securing those lottery revenues on a permanent basis as well. And so all of those bills really played into the success that we had in the budget. On the defense side, and a lot of what we deal with is really just responding to bills that are put in the process. Typically, we oppose a lot of bills that are there, but our desire is to work them through if at all possible. And this was a very good year for amending bills that we had concerns with or defeating those that we just flat out couldn't work with. Here is a list of bills that I think are particularly important that we spent hours in stakeholder meetings working on, related to changes in how we regulate mobile food vendors, PTSD benefits for law enforcement, the governor's package related to the opioid crisis, and how the major cable providers are treated across the state. Each of these, there were significant credible issues that the proponents brought, so we tried to work out meaningful amendments so we can do our job and we can make the business climate a little bit better, or in the case of the law enforcement folks, provide more benefits to folks who are dealing with PTSD. I also know that these are probably issues that your professional staff are looking at and trying to implement, and there may be issues with that, so we want to be a resource in that regard as well. Also, on the bottom part is the ongoing conversation about pension reform. Same thing, this is in the implementation phase. If there are questions, we want to be available as a resource. Probably the biggest is 2097. This is where there was a mandate for the board to adopt a policy related to its pension liability. We had a meeting with the finance directors and budgeteers a couple weeks ago. Our staff created a template policy that complies with the law and I think can meet the needs of your county. If there's any need for technical expertise on that, my team would be happy to be available on that issue as well. Again, a bunch of bills that I won't bore you with, but there are a few that I do want to touch base on that we spent a lot of time on. 1507 was the water amendments bill. That issue was obviously part of the larger water discussion. That issue did not succeed this year, but I do expect that the executive will bring back policy items related to water policy next year. So we need to keep rolling forward. Similarly, on protective orders, school safety, that issue had a lot of county touch points as well. It didn't pass, but I expect that item to come back in the future as well. And so we'll just have to continue to partner in that. And I did want to mention 1147, actually, I'll go to 1287, the ADOT revisions bill. This is a big ADOT omnibus, if you will, but included in that bill was a provision related to ADOT studying new technology as it relates to license plates. And you may recall that that was an issue that your engineer, Stephen Latowski, brought to us at our legislative summit. And we did approach ADOT, and they agreed to include a pilot project at their agency to evaluate that going forward. This final list is just kind of a catch-all because I wanted to share a couple of things. One is that of the 30 bills that counties really had problems with, they were all defeated or amended. And that really speaks to the collaboration with legislators. And I'm very proud of that. And I know that Senator Borelli, as government chair, played a big role in helping us to modify issues that counties had problems with, particularly as it related to home-based businesses, because he really understood the need for local flexibility. And he was always available to us to apply the local government lens to policies that were being driven at the state capitol. Two other items on this list that I'd like to point out is 1195. This is related to Title 36, how we do mental health screenings. And this is to address a problem in Maricopa County, but the bill would impact every county. And when we evaluated it, it appeared as though it would be very, very costly. The bill died. We expect it to come back next year. And so we'll need to do our homework with all of you to make sure that we're representing you well in that going forward. In 1516, related to CAP sovereign immunity, your colleague counties joined you in supporting the governor's sovereign immunity language as it relates to the CAP and opposing the language that would have codified sovereign immunity at the CAP. And so it was our pleasure to work with you on that issue as well. And then just finally, kind of a recap. The financial results for Mojave County were $1.3 million in general fund relief, close to $300,000 in new roads. Of course, that's mapped across the increased exposure caused by EORP, and I know you're having other issues in your other pension plans, but a very good financial result in a tight financial year. And as I mentioned, we were successful on the bills that we pushed as well. We are already beginning our planning for next year, and so I just wanted to do a quick little advertisement for you. We're asking for all of the counties to submit their legislative proposals by mid-August so we can begin packaging them for our legislative summit that will be in Yuma this year, and that's where we'll set our agenda. And I really hope that all of you can participate. It's always great to see you in that, and I love having every supervisor at the table when we're setting our agenda, and I appreciate that you've been participating in that. So with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to provide this briefing. I'd be happy to stand for any questions or comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions for Craig? Supervisor Nugent?
Thanks for coming up here and doing this like you do every year. It's always very interesting. There's a lot of very important issues this year. and we work well. I want to thank Supervisor Bishop for diligently going down and attending these meetings and having our representation there. But most of all, again, I want to reiterate my thanks to Regina Cobb for really being on the forefront of a lot, and even now out of session, helping us with some issues that are going to be big, which maybe you'll hear about coming up. So again, I look forward to the legislative summit in Yuma and working with you next year.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Supervisor Bishop?
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. It was indeed a pleasure to come down to Phoenix and attend the CSA legislative meetings with you leading the way and all of the other county supervisor legislative liaisons. I think we did a good job. I think with your help and the other supervisors giving me input before I went down to these weekly meetings certainly helped a lot. So kudos, and I look forward to the fight again next year.
Thank you.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Thank you for all the work that you did in supporting us, and it really helped. Thanks, Regina, for all the work that you did that kind of just made the way a little bit easier for us. We really appreciate all the work that you've done in multiple areas, but especially water. Thank you.
And of course, Craig will be working with you again diligently on the water issues again next year, and look forward to doing that. But before you leave the podium, I would like to ask our Representative Gina Cobb just to stand up for just a minute so we can recognize her for all her input and balancing our budget this year. Thank you so much. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members.
Okay, now we're on to the consent agenda. Staff has indicated that they would like to pull item number 16 off of the agenda today. The following items will be listed under the consent agenda, will be considered as a group and acted upon by one motion with no separate discussion of said items unless a board member so requests. In that event, the item will be removed from the consent agenda for consent, separate discussion and action. Supervisor Johnson, to my left.
Item 24.
Item number 24. Supervisor Bishop?
I was going to pull that one as well, so thank you.
Supervisor Angus? Nothing. Supervisor Wakamoto?
Nothing.
Thank you. And I'll be pulling item number 16 from discussion due to the request of Mr. Walsh, our Director of Developmental Services. So, Chair would entertain a motion to pass items 5 through 40 with the exception of 16 and 24.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carried unanimously, I believe. On to item number 24. Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't believe this item should be brought forth at this time, that it needs to be continued until we look at some other options available.
Mr. Chairman, just a reminder to the board that last year at this time, what the board directed is for us to extend the contract with Mojave Mental Health for 1 year. At that time, the board wanted us to go out to bid for this particular service, and we did. Staff did exactly what the board asked of us to do. So when we did go out to bid, it's my understanding that we only received one bid. We believe that there was a possibility that we would receive a bid from a qualified company out of Las Vegas, but they weren't able to be able to provide the service in Arizona. So we were left with a recommendation to the board that we award to Mojave Mental Health for an additional year. Now, that's not going to preclude staff from exploring other options at this time, but I believe time is not on our side with regard to this contract. And if you want more detail regarding that specific issue and whether time's on our side to have no action on this item, I would call on Becky O'Brien, our procurement director, to address that with the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. O'Brien?
Good morning, Chairman Watson, members of the board. Just a little information. The current contract with Mojave Mental Health expires June 30th, 2018. Mojave Mental Health provides statutorily required services for Title 36. Exploring other options, I don't believe would give you a viable option for the provision of those services to be put in place before the expiration of the current contract.
We have the ability to opt out within 30 days, even if we pass this contract?
The contract does have a termination clause with a 30-day notice.
Question?
I don't have any questions, but I would be in support of approving this contract, but also in support of looking at our other options and seeing what's out there that can be done differently and more effectively and efficiently. I'll make that a motion.
Okay, fine. We have a motion
Second.
and a second from Supervisor Wakamoto, I believe.
For discussion, Mr. Chairman?
Discussion, certainly, Mr. Supervisor Johnson.
Okay, I just want to point out, I mean, obviously the board's going to move ahead, but I don't believe they're living up to their contract. I believe that we could be subject to lawsuits. I know we're a one person, one horse operation here, but I just think it could come back and bite us, that's all.
Thank you, Supervisor Johnson. I understand that we're under a time constraint. I understand that we're not real pleased with the provider, but it appears to me that we don't have a lot of choice. Any further questions?
Becky, are you going on and trying to work with Access to see if we can do an IGA with them?
We're certainly willing to reach out to Access to gather the information of what that would look like. We haven't done that at this point, but would certainly be happy to do that investigation and let you know what that process would look like.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any further discussion? There being none, those in favor indicate to the clerk. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Roll call.
Supervisor Angus?
Aye.
Supervisor Johnson?
No.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
And Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion passes with Supervisor Johnson no being the lone no vote.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, I believe that concludes our consent agenda. And now we will open the public hearings. Item number 41 has been requested by Director Walsh to be removed from the agenda today, so I'll do so at this time. Item 41 will be brought back to us. I'll open the public hearing for item number 42, discussion possible action for the adoption of Mojave County Ordinance 2018-03, setting forth an amendment to Mojave County Ordinance 2010-10 to include new fees and fee increases for services provided through the implementation of the Mojave County zoning ordinance, and to include new fees and fee increases for services provided through the implementation of the Mojave County Land Division regulations, formerly included in the Mojave County ordinance. We have several people wishing to speak to this item. Jennifer Jones Esposito, please.
Mr. Chairman, I believe she stepped out of the room.
Okay, we'll give her 30 seconds if she wants to come down and speak.
She's
Ms. Esposito, you have the floor. For the public hearing on item number 42.
Thank you. Jennifer Jones Esposito, address previously stated. I just want to say that, I always oppose growing government, increasing fees, fines, taxes. But it's really my opinion that a wise leader will always look to keeping the process of getting permits cheap and easy, because then what happens is people actually are motivated to improve their property, and the county gets it back in property taxes because they increased their value. But we have a lot of people in this county who are financially challenged. I mean, even more so than my husband and myself. And this doesn't really affect us. We've got enough property to get an ag exemption. So I'm really speaking on behalf of other people who are similarly situated, who might not be able to afford that permit or might find the process to be difficult. You guys made it through the budget process, got updated. The county has more revenues than anticipated. We don't need to have a crisis. Any idea that we need to increase the size of government, because if we hire more people, and by the way, pay more of their pensions, then somehow we'll just be able to make the process faster for all those people who essentially now can't afford the permits. So, I just think that anything that would increase fees for the residents of the county is really a bad idea. My son-in-law is a contractor, and when this came up previously, I asked him, what he thought about it and why he didn't come to the meeting, and he said, well, I think I think fees need to be increased, until he had to pull his own. He's building his own house. And then I had to hear the moans and wails of, do you know how much it costs to get a permit for me to build my house? Yeah, I do, actually. So, this is one of those situations where I think people don't really realize they might be affected by it until they're affected by it, or as they usually say, like if you don't get involved in government, government will eventually get involved in you. So I just want to say that I'd like to see the county take the approach of less is more, and cheaper will come back to you and grow your revenue stream over the long run, that growing departments, hiring employees, and paying more pensions isn't really a good idea. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak to item number 42? Anyone else wishing to speak to item number 42, the implementation of the zoning ordinance? At this point, I'll close item number 42 and entertain a motion for. At this point, I'll make a motion to approve item number 42 for the implementation of the zoning ordinance and include the new fees and fee increases. It has been my experience over the last number of months having to deal with a number of inefficiencies and time delays in a number of our permits, and this is going to be in one direction to help provide for better service.
Chairman Watson, was that item 41 or 42?
42. Item number 41 has been pulled.
Okay. Okay, I will second your motion.
Okay.
I was confused with the item number.
And with that, Madam Clerk, if you'll do a roll call.
Supervisor Angus?
I've never done this before. Am I allowed to abstain?
Yes, you can abstain. That is allowed.
And here's why. I've been sort of trying to keep on top of a lot of these issues with fees and permits and stuff, and I had a kind of a personal issue this week, and I really hadn't had the chance to really go over it the way I want to. Ideally, I would just like to table this or continue this, but being that I really don't feel comfortable in approving it or denying it, I just want to abstain. So that's my vote.
Fair enough.
Supervisor Johnson?
No, I believe the increase is not high enough. We're subsidizing 70% of the fees.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
I struggle with this also. However, I believe that we need to have better service for people trying to move forward in this county with economic development and services that they need. So I will vote yes.
And Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries with a 3-to-1 vote with Supervisor Angus abstaining.
Thank you. On to the regular agenda. Item number 43, discussion, possible action for the adoption of Board Resolution 2018-064 to amend the South Mojave Valley Area Plan of Assessors Parcel Number 224-25-001 from a agricultural residential to a general commercial land use designation in the Mojave Valley vicinity, south of Plantation Road, east of Riverfront Parkway, Mojave County, Arizona. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval by unanimous vote prior, and then was continued by the board at the June 14th, 2018 board meeting. I have a number of people signed up to speak to this item. Sean McCaffrey.
Good morning, Chairman Watson, Board. My name is Sean McCaffrey. I'm a real estate director for ABF Freight System, headquartered in Fort Smith, Arkansas. I'm going to defer my time now as the other issues develop. There'll be additional people who can speak to the specific operations as to the proposal. So I'm going to defer my time at this time, but I'm obviously for.
Thank you, Mr. McCaffrey. I'll do my best not to slaughter your name. Sharad Kadakin from the Greens Group. Does that help?
That is correct, sir. Good morning. My name is Sharad Kadakia. I'm the developer. I'm based out of Orange County, California.
Please give your address, please.
My address is 9289 Research Drive, Irvine, California. And I have been approached by ABF, and I am the developer who's developing that truck parking facility. And we have gone through a lot of extent to accommodate the needs of ABF and keeping in perspective how it has to be developed right. They are in Arizona today, and they would love to be staying in Arizona. They have other options open, and we thought that Fort Mojave was the right fit for them, and that's why we are here from California, and they are there from the East Coast to come and do the development here. We would like to see this area getting developed to do that. It's probably going to bring somewhere close to 60 to 65 jobs into the area. That's where we are coming from. And that's all I have to say. So I'm for it. I'm the actual developer who's buying the land and developing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ed Myers?
Morning, Ed Myers. I'm 3801 Old Greenwood Road, Fort Smith, Arkansas. I'm the Director of Western Line Haul Operations for ABF Freight. And I'm really here today because I know there was some things brought up 2 weeks ago, and there was some misinformation, and I emailed all of you in regards to some of that, but I just wanted to address what we're trying to do. We have a relay operation where drivers come in, get out of the truck, a new driver gets in, and we have that in Kingman now. We've been at that location for 38 years as a safe, good corporate neighbor. And what we want to do is we want to move that operation west. A couple of things that were brought up were by some of employees that do not represent the company. They do not represent the union. We had a change of operations between the company and the union where this was approved by all parties, and we set this in motion now. So we do not have reefers. We do not have idling. We do not run sleepers through here. Our trucks are set to cut off from idling after 5 minutes. We do not fuel. We do not do repairs. We do not do maintenance at this facility. Our drivers come in from the east, get out of the truck, drivers get in, go to California, and then they'll come back again. It's simply a relay operation. On the proposed property, there's a small house building that we want to renovate into a nice office. We want to have 24-hour supervision there. We're going to landscape, fence, light. We're going to beautify. We're going to make this property that's really not attractive right now look so much better. We will not be driving down residential streets. In our current operation in Kingman, they do not honk the horn whenever they leave the place. And I guess what I really want to convey is that ABF cannot remain in Kingman based on operational efficiencies. We must move farther west. And I would hate for somebody that just doesn't want to move to maybe ruin what we have as an ideal location lined up, and then we end up settling for something much less ideal down the line. But the bottom line is ABF must move farther west, and I am all for this amendment. Thank you.
Questions?
I
have a question. The purpose of your move is a time factor
Yes, sir.
of probably about an hour, is that?
It's an hour, but in our operational efficiencies area of it, it counts as 2 hours simply
2 hours.
because you go out and you save an hour and you come back and you save an hour. And it makes all the difference in the world based on what we want to do with it.
So let me see if I get this correct. So your people that are traveling west from Albuquerque
Yes, sir.
have enough time to get here, and the people that are going from Kingman to Los Angeles are short 1 hour, is that?
They will go down to Los Angeles and come back in the same trip.
In the same trip, and they're short 1 hour or thereabouts?
Yes, sir. Not only that, they'll go from Mojave Valley to Sacramento, which we cannot reach from Kingman. Not on the legal DOT hours. That makes all the difference in the world.
Okay. So then you're having to entertain that time that the driver has to be off for X number of hours before they can get back in to drive, is that
Yes,
correct?
sir. Yes, sir. DOT driving hours, exactly.
Just wanted to make sure that I had that correct.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any question for Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
It is my understanding, and please confirm this if you would, that your company plans to relocate from Kingman regardless of what this board does today.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
So my thought is we would like to keep you in Mojave County if you're determined to move from the Kingman area. Although the company's been here for so long, I think it'd be a big loss for this part of Mojave County. But if it stays within Mojave County, I think that's a good thing. My concerns are the roads that the trucks will be traveling, and I don't think you're going to be able to alleviate those concerns for me at all, but it is a concern. And then I appreciate the letter that you wrote. The only thing that you didn't address is one of the drivers pointed out that that you have to make sure that you have a horn that's working before you leave the parking lot. So is that true?
The DOT lists a number of items that a driver needs to ensure are in working order. A horn is listed as one of them. I've talked to our manager in our Kingman location, and he says he can't recall anybody honking the horn. Now, it doesn't mean somebody's going to be disgruntled and start honking the horn if we move just to prove their point, but it does not currently happen at our location in Kingman, Arizona. And yes, ma'am, and related to what you said as far as moving, we've had a great relationship in Kingman. It's just that we can't operate the way we do, the way our cost structure is. We must move farther west, and we would more than love to stay in Mojave County. And the location that we have picked out is ideal for us. As far as the roads traveled, it's about the same mileage from our Kingman location to 40 as it is from the proposed location to Interstate 40. I don't know if there's a way we could compare road use in that situation, but it's very comparable.
Are you at all concerned about the condition of the roads? I understand at least a part of the road that your trucks will be traveling on are considered residential, and they're not that wide. I mean, they weren't built for heavy trucks.
Well, our plan was not to go through the residential district. We were going to go up 95 down to Barackman and come in that way. And we looked at the roads. They were in fine shape. We didn't see any major issues at all. Like very comparable to what we use now in and out of Kingman.
Okay, you're probably the first person I've heard that didn't complain about Mojave County roads, so thank you very much for that. Coming from Arkansas, maybe you've got a better comprehension of what a good road is. So
good point.
That's all my questions. Thank you very much for traveling to Kingman.
Thank you.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
I drove down to, because things came up, I drove down to the site, and I took pictures of what is there, and existing is commercial. And Nathan, if you want to see pictures of what exists, this is what is existing. Can you keep going? Keep going. But this is the neighbor. Keep on going. These are the neighbors that are around this, and if they're going to fence, keep going. This is what is there. This is the road. Is that it, Nathan? Or do I have any more? And this is what exists in that area right now. So looking at the roads and the way they would travel, because of the concern because I've received comments from neighborhoods. I went down there to look at it myself to see what was there. If they're going to fence and landscape the area that is there, it's going to be an improvement. And I would be glad to have you in Mojave County. Thank you.
We have every intention of landscaping, fence, light, everything. It'll be a vast improvement.
Are you going to neglect the value of the antiquity of the corral bar?
I didn't take a picture of that. I did not take a picture of that. However,
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Hector Rivas? I'll pass. Thank you. Rick Perea? I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yes, you did. Thank you. Good morning. I have a question for you, Chairman Watson.
Please name your...
3362 Mother Lode Road, Kingman.
Thank you.
Were you able to go down and visit the property?
Yes.
Okay. Our concerns, and I'm here speaking on behalf of the drivers, there are safety issues involved with this piece of property. And yes, you would be traveling through a residential area, which there's a lack of lighting. There's 2-lane roads from the highway where you exit J Street over to Broadway, which is Needles Highway, Mojave Valley Highway over the river to Levy Road right to Barackman right, which the plantation is right there on your left. We're 24/7. This means trucks will be traveling through this to this piece of property in the evening. There are no street lights in this area, and it will be especially noisy at night when there's not much traffic going on, but you're going to have trucks entering and exiting the property 24/7. That's 30 to 60 trucks, tractor trailers a day. And my concern, or in my opinion, the roads are already in poor condition. There's no shoulder to pull off on. If a tractor trailer was to pull off on one of those shoulders, it would not be able to, it would get stuck. You wouldn't be able to move it again. When the developer listed this as allow a truck parking lot, we think that's a bit deceitful because it's a trucking terminal. We're not going there just to park. These are our jobs to go enter and exit this property on a daily basis. I'm hoping that you disapprove this change, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brea.
I have a question for him.
Mr. Brea, we have a question. Supervisor Wakamoto has a question for you.
Yes.
Sir, are you a truck driver?
Yes.
Okay. Most of the truck services in Needles are on the far west side of Broadway, and that's where I see the trucks come in, not through J Street. I know J is the most central, but I either see trucks coming in on the east side Broadway because there are truck services there, and on the west side, which makes traveling through Needles not going through the town. I see that's where the truck services and truck stops are, on either side. So you would take the center of town to drive your truck through?
That is
instead of taking one of the other exits where most of the other trucks are?
That is the most direct route, but either way, there's only one bridge over the river. So, and how you're still got to get to that point. Even the bridge going over the river is a 2-lane.
Correct.
Okay? All the roads in which I travel here in Kingman are 4 lanes.
Well, I mean, I'm wondering why. I mean, I know that's the most direct route, and that's the one with the most turns and most residential, but if most of the other trucks are going the other way, because it seems to be more direct, and it's through business areas instead of residential, directly to the bridge. So that would, if you took an extra 5 minutes or so down to the next exit, you would not have to go through the residential area.
But isn't your concern with Mojave County, because you're talking about Needles? Okay,
Well, I mean-
once I cross over the bridge, I'm in Mojave Valley.
Yes.
Those are the roads that I'm most concerned with because they're all 2 lanes. They're very narrow. There are no shoulders. We are driving at night. There are no lights in that area, no street lights, no signals to turn with in that whole area. Whenever we pull out, we're going to pull out at a stop sign to cross traffic. It's not a 4-way stop. All that property in Mojave Valley, or to go to that property, Mojave Valley, there's nothing that is truck-friendly.
I understand what you're saying in
Okay.
terms of, and I've lived there for a long time. I honestly, safety is a huge issue. However, being on that road at various times of the day and night or evening, it's not heavily, I mean, there's not a lot of traffic on that road.
But there will be when we arrive.
Well, I mean, but you're all truckers. I'm concerned, but I believe this will be an improvement for the area and so if you're not in Mojave Valley, you would rather be, say, in Needles? Or if it's going to move, it's going to move. So you would rather be in Needles than in Mojave Valley?
I'd rather be in a safe location where it's truck-friendly for us.
Okay.
There's 60 of us.
All right.
And there's 100 and some drivers out of Albuquerque. Okay? There are concerns about where you take your tractor trailer. We just don't go anywhere with trucks. Most of all, we don't go through residential areas.
Okay, so your concern is not the move. It's actually where it's going to be. So if we deny this and it doesn't come to Mojave Valley, it's going to move elsewhere, and you would be okay with that? I mean that's
Depends on the
basically-
location.
But, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion for item number 43.
Chairman Watson, before we do that, I think there's a gentleman, because I want to ask a question about that, because it seems more like a labor dispute to me than, all we're doing is approving this land use, and all that is really, I hate to say it's really not our business. True? Okay. So.
My point of view is, right now, for Walmart and everybody else who's there on 95 in the valley, everybody gets off at Broadway, comes on 95, goes over the bridge. 95 is a truck route today. It goes all the way. He's saying that you are going to take a right turn on Levy. We are not talking about going on right turn on Levy. ABF is going to mandate all the trucks to go over the bridge, go on 95, all the way to Brackman, turn around, and go back to the yard. That street is pretty wide. There is virtually no traffic. If you look at the traffic on 95 versus from Brackman to Plantation, there is nothing there. There is nothing there. So him complaining, saying that this is through a residential neighborhood, there is no residences there, not on that Brackman Street and not on 95. And if they are there, there is 1 or 2 homes which have been grandfathered in from 50 years. Whole of 95 is now a commercial zone. It is going to happen today, tomorrow, 6 months down the road. That 95 is commercial. So from Broadway, when they come in from Needles, and they come in all the way till the bridge, and we have only one bridge is what he's complaining. Nobody here has ability to go and build one more bridge. We have to do what it takes for the existing infrastructure that we have and develop our county the best possible way we can do it. So the bridge is not a question. The question is whether 95 is legal street to go on right now or not. On 95, we have a lot of trucks going up and down continuously, round the clock. People come to unload and load at Walmart all the time. So the question of being through a residential neighborhood is kind of moot point. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Supervisors.
Yes, sir.
I'd, again, just like to address the safety issue. ABF has been in business since 1923. We're located everywhere, all states in the United States. We have won numerous safety awards recognized as the National Care of the Year for Safety Awards. We have a rigorous, vigorous safety training program that all of the drivers participate. Again, this, as Supervisor Wakamoto, I think has hit on, is really boiling down to an employee disgruntlement, which is not really appropriate for this form, in my opinion. I'll have Mr. Myers speak again as well as to the approval by the union membership themselves to this move.
Just to reiterate, the company and the union met, discussed all aspects of it, and it was agreed to by all parties. And you're absolutely correct. It's a labor dispute, and it doesn't matter where we want it to move to. Those that don't want to move, the disgruntled, would come with some reason to speak against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Chair would entertain a motion for item number 43.
It's in my district. I move that we accept this.
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Supervisor Angus. Any further discussion? No further discussion. Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
And Chairman Watson?
Well, I'm losing them from my district,
Oh, don't
It's
be
only
afraid.
fair.
but I will vote yes.
Motion carries.
On to item number 44. The discussion, possible action regarding the adoption of Board Resolution 2018-065 for the rezone of Assessors Parcel Number 224-25-001 from general commercial 1 acre minimum to commercial manufacturing open lot storage zone to allow for a truck parking lot in the Mojave County vicinity east of Riverfront Parkway. This is in Mojave County. The Commission, Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval by unanimous vote. This has been continued by the board from the June 4th, 2018 meeting. I have the same number of folks wishing to speak to this item, and you're more than welcome to speak if you'd like. Sean McCafferty.
Yes, Chairman. I don't really have many new issues to raise. It tags along with the previous item on the agenda. The zoning to allow the truck parking lot, again, is going to be simply a relay station to understand our operations. The truck units there's going to be no transfer of freight. They simply will be parking, spending the night or moving in and out, and that's the extent of the operations. So as far as the zoning issue, it all works together with the whole trucking operation that's contemplated.
Thank you. Sherrod, did you wish to speak again, or do you feel it's necessary?
Yeah, fine, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Myers, do you feel it necessary to speak? Yes. Thank you. Hector Rivas? Rick Pierre, you wish to speak again?
just have a couple of things to add. So if we're driving up the 95, we're making a right-hand turn to come back to the property on Brackman. So is Brackman considered a truck route? I know the 95 is, but Brackman isn't. The other thing, when the company did a change of operations for this, they said that they were taking the local cartage with them. And when they list it as a truck parking lot, that is not a local operation. Local operations means you have pickup and deliveries within the current vicinity, which is all of Mojave County. So that means you're making and breaking freight. So when he says it's just going to be a truck parking lot where we're just coming and going, that's not what their change of operations was filed under. Thank you. Any
Thank you, sir.
questions?
Supervisor Wakamoto, this is your district.
Brackman was 95 before the bridge was built. So that street, for all practical purposes, used to be the old 95. Just for clarification, it is not a residential street. It is a commercial street. That Brackman Road is a commercial road. And Indian Department of Affairs have a lot of facilities there, and their trucks do go once in a way on that road. So it is a commercial 95. 95 just shifted from there to the bridge road, but it was the old 95. That's it.
Thanks, sir. Okay, Chair will entertain a motion for item number 44.
I move that we pass this adoption of BOS resolution number 2018065.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any further questions?
I'm sorry,
There being
Chairman.
no further questions?
Chairman, if I can make, are we adopting it? We're not passing it, right?
Oh, sorry, adopt.
Adopting, okay, thank you.
Okay. Correction duly noted? Okay. Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Angus? Yes. Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
And Chairman Watson?
Again, I hate to see it leave Kingman, but I'll vote yes. Thank you.
Motion carries.
Okay, on to item number 45. Sitting as the Board of Directors for the Malibu Road Improvement District of Mojave County, Arizona. Discussion possible action for the adoption of Malibu Road Improvement District Resolution number 2018-01 and accept the owner's request for property addition to the Malibu Road Improvement District for lots 6 and 7, Block 8, Walnut Creek Estates, Unit 2, Track 3013. Supervisor Bishop, this is your district, I believe.
Thank you, and I'm very excited about this improvement district. I think Mr. Les Henley can probably give us an update and a summary as to where we are now, but if we're ready to go, I'm ready to vote yes.
Chairman Watson, Supervisors, we are ready to go. We have two items before you today on the Malibu Road Improvement District. The first is a housekeeping item clearing up a lot combination for one owner had two lots that was in the works at the time the district was being formed and was not reflected in the formation of the district, so this cleans that up. Then the second item, the next item, 46, is the petition to incur expenses, and that is when we will pull the trigger and get to work.
Thank you very much. Any further questions?
I have no questions, and I'll make a motion that we approve item number 45.
We have a motion and a second. Supervisor Johnson, any further questions? There being none, Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
And Chairman Watson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item number 46, sitting as the Board of Directors for the Malibu Road Improvement District of Mojave County, Arizona. Discussion, possible action for the adoption of Malibu Road Improvement District number 201-02, accepting the petitions to incur expenses for Malibu Road Improvement District of Mojave County, Arizona, located in the Mojave Valley area. Supervisor Bishop.
Chairman Watson, I just wanted to point out to anyone in the audience or that's watching in the video, we've talked about improvement districts as a way to get a residential area paved or improved. And I think this is a shining example of what other communities and other neighborhoods can do. And with that being said, I do make a motion that we approve resolution number 2018-02, the Malibu Road Improvement District.
Okay, approve the adoption of?
Yes, the adoption of, my apologies.
All right, we have a motion and a second from Supervisor Johnson. Any further discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
And Chairman Watson.
Yes, by all means. Thank you.
Motion carries.
Item number 47, acknowledge the receipt and refer to Public Works a petition to the Mojave County Board of Supervisors requesting that East Hatband Road from Stockton Hill Road to Avendia Ramirez, a length of approximately 0.43 miles, be accepted into the Mojave County road system for regular maintenance. Actually, this is in my district. Anyone have any questions? I'll make a motion then to accept the, acknowledge and refer to Public Works for the petition for requesting that East Hatband Road to Avendia, length of probably 0.43 miles, be accepted into the Mojave County road system for regular maintenance.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
No.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
And Chairman Watson.
Yes.
Motion carries with 4-1, with Supervisor Johnson voting no.
Thank you. On to item number 48 for the adoption of Board Resolution 2018-047, accepting the road maintenance petition request that Del Norte Drive from 10th Street running 310 feet north to 10th Street from Del Norte Drive running west for 300 feet be accepted into the Mojave County Road Maintenance Program for tertiary maintenance in the Dolan Springs area of Mojave County. Supervisor Bishop, this is your district.
Yes, it is, and this is a long-standing problem with during the monsoon seasons. The water floods up in this area, and it's makes it very difficult to get in and out. And I think this tertiary maintenance will help with the storm damage. And unless there's any other discussion, I make a motion that we do approve.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
No.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
Chairman Watson.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
On to item number 49, approve the allocation of not to exceed $20,000 in authorized 2018 funds, road program funding towards Public Works direct expenses to complete a cooperative maintenance work to stabilize and hard surface Skipper Boulevard, Spear Boulevard, Senator Boulevard, county highway length of approximately 1.4 miles. This is in the White Hills area. Supervisor Bishop.
This is a project that's been talked about for years in the White Hills area, and it's a perfect public-private partnership. We have Golden Horseshoe Ranchos Unit 2, the HOA are contributing $5,000 toward oil and water in their truck and blade. Total contribution $8,500. Kalamazoo Materials, which is a commercial business at the end of this roadway. They're offering to provide the chips for a chip seal plus $5,000 toward oil. Their contribution is $9,700. Then Vista Landscape Materials, they also do business there. They're offering to haul and truck the millings from US 93 to the location. They estimate their value of $3,500. And then Star Nursery is giving $5,000 toward the oil. Then there's a property owner that's providing the storage for this with an agreement with the county, and then Mojave County is going to pitch in with engineering and traffic control, trucking, and the remainder of the oil costs. So everybody's pitching in, and I think it's a wonderful that we're showing that we can work together to get things done. With that being said, I make a motion that we approve item number 49, approving the allocation of not to exceed $20,000 in authorized fiscal year 2018 road program funding toward Public Works direct expenses to complete this cooperative maintenance work to stabilize and hard surface these identified roads in the White Hills area.
We have a motion?
Second.
And a second. Supervisor Angus. Any further discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
And Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Unanimous. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Item number 50, discussion, possible action, setting the salaries for the 5 constables for the 4-year period beginning January 1, 2019. This was continued by the board from the June 4th meeting. As I recall, I may have moved for the continuance. In either case, we have a number of people who wish to speak on this item. The first being Mike Cobb.
Good morning, Chairman Watson and Supervisors. Mike Cobb, Kingman Precinct Constable, 1745 Hope Avenue, Kingman, Arizona. I left some paperwork to begin the meeting. I got some figures to go through real quick, and then got a little statement to read. There we go. The first one shows that, unfortunately, the state mandates that we have a superior court, a justice court, and to operate those for criminal things through superior court, the sheriff's department operates that. Through the civil department, the sheriff generally operates that. Through justice court, criminal stuff is generally handled by the sheriff's department and the city police department. And the civil items are generally handled by the constable's office. In Muni Court, the city takes care of both civil and criminal on that. In Mojave County, we have 5 precincts, justice court precincts. Kingman, we have 20,392 registered voters, is the number that was provided to me last week. Surbat Justice Precinct, there's 22,431. The Bullhead City Precinct, 34,435. Lake Havasu Precinct, 40,683. North Canyon Justice Precinct, 4,415. Those are registered voters. Last week we talked, or 2 weeks ago, you brought up the 4-year average of serves. I just want to note on that number that was on your documents that was given to you, that included only what was served. It did not include any attempts or extra serves. So in that, In 2017, on the far right side of that sheet, how many court cases was actually filed at Justice Court. There was 17,802 filed in the consolidated Kingman-Surbat Justice Court. I done 619 serves, averaged over the 4 years, per year. The Surbat Constable done 367, averaged per year for them 4 years. In Bullhead City, there's 7,068 total court cases filed. The Bullhead Constable averaged 228 total serves over each year over 4 years. Lake Havasu Constable, there was 5,839 total cases filed, 113 per year average for 4 years. The North Canyon Constable, there was 5,306 cases served, and he averaged 125 serves per year. At your last meeting, you directed Coral Lloyd, Finance Director, to prepare a calculation for constable compensation using an applicable percentage-based formula based on the 4-year average number of serves by the constables. She has provided this info to you. I urge you not to use this formula and to approve the salaries as they have been for the past 4 years. Using a formula to base the wages may work in the future, but there would need to be a lot more info rather than just the number of serves. It would need to be a justified formula to come to this. A justified formula would need total attempts of both serves and non-serves, time, distance, and risks of the serve and non-serve, time spent as a bailiff, time spent as court security, time spent completing required paperwork, time spent going to the post office, time spent training. The percentage-based formula does not use any of these. It is based on total number of only served documents. There's no basis for whether a constable failed to meet, met, or exceeded the duties of their job. I believe that each constable, with the exception of the Lake Havasu Constable, has either met or exceeded their duties of the job. I urge you to motion and approve keeping all constable salaries as they have been for the last 4 years for the next 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. Martin Stansbury. If you folks are going to be speaking, you might want to get a little closer to the podium so it doesn't take so long to get down here.
Supervisors, my name is Martin Stansbury, 3211 Medicine Bow Drive in Lake Havasu City. I attempted to get an email to you all, and I hope that you got it. And basically, that's what I want to reiterate. Before I decided to get into the race for constable, I had a meeting with 3 of the current constables and discussed issues that would be required, as in my experience, requirements of the job, hours required, possible conflicts of interest, and salary also came up. At the end of that meeting, we all agreed that my experience would make me a good candidate for it, and I immediately started the process of getting my signatures, figuring out my campaign strategy, and I've got hundreds of hours invested in it. I actually stumbled into this meeting last time it was on the calendar. I wasn't in the building for the meeting, but I have to recognize one of the constables and came in and sat through the meeting. I have to say I left in a pretty stunned to hear that the terms at which I thought I was getting involved in could possibly change, and it made me think that, if had I known that before, I might not have gone into the race. I'm a self-employed for the last 31 years. I do everything full speed. I've never collected from the government for anything that I haven't earned. I'm not a double dipper, and if I were to get the job, I would certainly give 100% effort. I've already established relationships with 2 of the busiest civil attorneys in Lake Havasu, and I think those numbers would definitely turn around. So I would urge you and hope that you wouldn't change the terms after the signatures were gathered and all those hundreds of hours were invested. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stansbury. Joe Archie?
Chairman Watson and Honorable Board of Supervisors and staff. My name is Joe Archie. I live at 7770 North Sealy Drive in Lake Havasu City, more commonly known as Havasu Heights. And I too am a candidate for Constable for the Lake Havasu District. When I decided that I might run for this position, the first thing I did is went on the county website to see what the job duties and/or salary was. I couldn't find anything there, so I called the county manager's office and was told that there was nothing specific about job duties, but the salary depended upon each office based on how much paper was served and what each office did. So I asked specifically, well then, what is the Lake Havasu office, since that's the one I would be running for? And they told me that the salary was $57,045. I said, okay. And what's the least one? North Canyon at 38,000 something, I believe. I didn't write the exact numbers down at the time. So that was a consideration as to whether I run or not. And I don't want you to think that I based my decision on what the salary was, because that's not it. But it does play a factor in it. And now I find out that you're considering changing that factor. I would agree with Mr. Cobb that if you are going to change it, it should be based more on a little broader formula and just on the number of papers served. I'm also aware of the fact that the Lake Havasu office has, and no fault to, I'm not going to blame anybody in the current office, but that the number of serves are down. And I can assure you that if and when I'm elected, there's no one that will work any harder than I will to make sure that our customers, our constituents, are provided the type of service that they need and deserve. And therefore, I would request one of two things. You either, one, leave it the way it is currently for the next 4 years, or you table this if you decide that this is does not meet your goals and objectives. Table it till next year and take a look at what the numbers say next year. Because by then, you will have a new constable and you will be able to see whether I'm right or wrong in that the services will increase. Thank you for your...
Thank you, Mr. Archie.
I have a comment for Mr. Archie, if I might,
Certainly.
Chairman.
Certainly.
The board can only address the salary issue every 4 years, is my understanding. It has to be done during the month of June, so
Okay, that's something I wasn't aware of.
have to do it today, whatever we decide.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Johnson, you look like you're tempted to say something.
Oh, you all done with the public?
Yes, We have no other speakers signed up.
I mean, we keep bringing up serves, not looking at the money that's generated by the constable's office. You can bogus up serves. You know, you look at the numbers, you look at some of them coming in, and I'm not pointing out any specific constable. I'm just going through the records where we're now serving for the county attorney's office. County attorney has an investigator, you know, and if for some reason, and so if the constable's doing that, then the general fund is paying for that. Where if you're going to do it for the county attorney, well then let the county attorney be docked from his budget to pay for the constables on that. You can't go out and just pick them up. It's the same thing with serving at the jail. You can mail these, send them over to the jail and have them serve there. We charge, or the rates that I see, is $2.40 a mile to serve processes. with these numbers of processes, and I think it's, what, 10 miles or 6 miles the first one or something, I don't know what it is, 6 miles, I think. We should be making money on this deal. I don't see the money coming in. That's my problem. We talk about the number it serves, but I don't see the money coming in, and if we're should be charging $2.40 a mile, and then I hear that, well, sometimes we don't get enough money up front. Well, then, if we can't make it on the first 2 attempts and we run out of the money, then they should contact the people and say, hey, it's going to cost you more money to get these served, because we're not running a nonprofit here. That's all.
Thank you, Supervisor Johnson. Supervisor Angus.
Yeah, Chairman Watson, I think that when Mr. Cobb and Mr. Cullison came in front of us a couple of weeks ago and asked for a raise, it was a very ill-advised and not very well-timed plea. And I think that they realized that by our comments. And when I voted to go along with this reformulation, it was just sort of to, show people, exactly what the constables do. I'm on record saying that I think the whole position of constable is an antiquated position. There's just a handful of states that still have them. I have a friend who's a constable in Laughlin, and I spoke to him, and he gets like a token $1,700 a year. But they also have to produce into the general fund and have into an enterprise fund. So they have to meet expectations as well. So, however, this board does not have anything to do with the position of constable. That's from the state. And is Mr. Sullivan here? Hi there. That might be something that we want to talk about. I think in years gone by, it has been brought up. True, it's about to address the position of constable. If we wanted to do it that way, I would be all for that. But to do it this way is petty and vindictive. It looks like it's a punishment for coming before us and asking for it. As Mr. Archie and the other gentleman said, what they made their decisions to run based on information they were given from the county, and to change it now, I think would be, it would be wrong. I know you like to use this, morally wrong to do that. So I won't be voting yes on it, but be aware that I'll be speaking at the state all I can to see how we can address this in the years to come.
Supervisor Wakamoto, comment?
I agree with Supervisor Angus. I believe that changing the pay right now at this point is not where we need to be. We have people running for office with the understanding that this is a salary that they were looking at, whether it's the salary or not that motivated them to move on.
Thank you, Supervisor.
And Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, this is statute. This is when we set like Supervisor Bishop said, set it. So it's not a punishment or anything to anybody, and people running should know when their salaries are set. So I see that as not there's no indication this board has punished anybody. We review everything every year. That was all.
Thank you, Supervisor Johnson. Supervisor Bishop, your comment?
Thank you. First off, I wanted to clarify, Supervisor Angus, am I correct in assuming that you would support eliminating constitutionally the office of constable?
Yes.
Legislatively and with the Arizona Constitution? Okay, that's interesting. So I have a number of things that I want to talk about. One of the things is the salary being reduced, and I looked at what the salary is for a deputy sheriff or a deputy sheriff recruit or a detention officer that they're law enforcement positions, not as a constable, but those jobs pay less than what we're willing to suggest paying the constables if we reduce their salary. So if there's a man or woman that'll go to work and put their life on the line for less money, I don't see where it's an insult to the constables to do the job for a lot more money than what we pay our law enforcement, our certified law enforcement officers. So deputy sheriff and a detention officer make anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000 a year to start out. And if we reduce the constables, the lowest it'll be reduced would be the Lake Havasu constable at almost $50,000. So it's $10,000 more than someone we send out on the street to dodge bullets. So I don't think it's unreasonable for that salary. But, I did want to point out the fact that the North Canyon constable, we put him in a very dicey predicament up there in the Colorado Strip, where we had a constable that was not performing. And we had to remove that constable, and we put Constable Mike Hogard in that position. And he's successfully undertaken the challenge to repair the damaged relationships in the North Canyon precinct with professionalism, and done a darn good job. So besides what we talked about at the last meeting, I gave that some thought, and I think we should recommend that this board consider a small salary increase as a token of our appreciation for his work up on the Arizona Strip. So the total, if we reduce the constables as recommended by the Finance Department, we'd have a reduction savings of $16,255. So I think we could afford to give the North Canyon constable a raise of $945, bringing his salary from $11,055 up to $12,000 a year, just a token appreciation. So with that being said, unless anybody has any questions for the formula that the Finance Department put together, I'm going to move that we set the constable salary based on the percent of documents served compared to the highest volume as calculated by staff in the Finance Department as follows. The Kingman constable would retain his current salary of $57,045 with no changes. The Surbat constable reduced to $53,589. The Bullhead City constable reduced to $51,434. And the Lake Havasu constable reduced to $49,857. And the North Canyon constable, an increase from the current salary of $11,055 to $12,000. That's my motion.
Thank you.
Motion to discuss?
We have a motion, and, pardon me, I didn't,
I'd like to ask a question of Supervisor Bishop.
yes.
Supervisor Bishop, you were a constable in the Surbat?
I was formerly,
Okay.
yes.
Do you think you were overpaid?
Yes,
You do?
I do.
Because you got in front of this board, the previous board, and asked for more money.
I asked for money to reimburse my mileage. I never asked for an increase in pay.
But if you were
although
overpaid, then you could have, the mileage could have been a freebie. I'm just really surprised to hear that, but thank you for your honesty.
It was like a part-time job. I did the job, I accepted
It's a part-time
pay.
job?
Yes.
Mr. Cobb, do you consider yours a part-time job? That's the first time I've heard that. That's interesting. Now it goes again. Write that down, Craig. Put that in the record, that a constable, past constable, believes it's just a part-time job. Okay. Okay, that's all I have.
No one else wishing to speak at the moment. I'll take the opportunity to recognize Mike Hogart in the North Canyon precinct. Mike appears to be a rock star as compared to some of the other information that we've received. But I am a little concerned about the election that's coming up. And the ladies and gentlemen that are be running for that office or those offices did have the understanding, I'm sure, that it was at the current salary. Although the modifications as proposed by the Finance Department are not that that different than what I would have anticipated. Although, where I would disagree is if you're going to be looking at the Lake Havasu and the Bullhead City areas in the rough neighborhood of $50,000, certainly if you could take a look at the North Canyon by the numbers, $12,000 is kind of meager in comparison. So I could probably support an adjustment to the numbers if you were to look at increasing Mr. Hogarth's to $15,000. If you would amend that motion.
So Supervisor Watson, you are supporting the proposal other than the North Canyon Constable, and you would increase that to $15,000?
As a matter of fact, I would probably just make it real easy. Leave Kingman as the 5745, the Surbat at 53,587, the Bullhead and Lake Havasu, they're really close. Why don't you just make them both 50? And take Mr. Hogarth to 15 for an outstanding contribution.
Okay, I'd like to amend my motion to, as you stated, leave the Kingman Constable at his current salary, $57,045, the Surbat Constable and the Surbat Constable to be reduced to $53,589, the Bullhead and Lake Havasu Constables to be reduced to $50,000, and the North Canyon Constable to be increased to $15,000. That would be my amended motion.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, Mr. Chairman, I believe the North Canyon has gone up because of all the evictions. I think it'll drop down once all the evictions in Colorado City are done.
That may be true, but I think we have another 18 months to 2 years for that. Thank you.
And one other thing I'd like to point out is we cannot address this salary concern for another 4 years. So I know there's an election coming up, I understand that, but in 4 years there's going to be an election coming up, and that's the way it's written in the statute, that we make these considerations prior to the election. So if any of the candidates running for constable, once we make a decision here today, we'll know what the salary is and can go forward with that knowledge.
Okay. We have a motion, an amended motion, and I'll second that motion. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Angus?
Absolutely not.
Supervisor Johnson? No. Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
No.
And Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion does not carry.
Okay, motion doesn't carry. So, Chair would entertain a new motion.
Chairman Watson, I make a motion to keep the constable's salary at their existing salary. Do I have to go through exactly all the numbers? At the existing salary,
The current existing?
current existing salary.
Okay. We have a motion for current existing salary.
Oh, and do you want to, would you like to up to the 15,000?
Yes, I would.
Okay, so I amend that with the exception of North County.
As amended, and I'll second your motion.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
No.
Supervisor Bishop?
No.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
And Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries 3-2.
On to item number 51. The discussion, possible action for the adoption of the 2018-2019 tentative budget with modifications and set August 6th 2018 as the date for the public hearing on the final budget and tax levy and the truth in taxation, if applicable, and set a special board meeting for the adoption of the final budget on August 6th, 2018, following the public hearing. We have Director Coral Lloyd with Financial Services. I have several questions, and I'm sure someone else will.
Good morning, Chairman Watson and Supervisors. I appreciate the opportunity to review the tentative budget and all of your thoughts and comments prior to, hopefully, an adoption of the tentative budget before the beginning of the fiscal year. Overall, we've followed the statute in preparing the schedules, which are made available and will be advertised as such, and following the statutes with those. The changes that we've made since our budget workshop with the preliminary budget and today are outlined in the packet, and I'd like to take just a minute to go through some of those changes with you. The first section of the modifications include reallocation of the impact of the retirement for the elected official retirement system percentage change. So we had initially estimated about $1 million. And as of our calculations, excuse me, that should actually cost about $890,000. I would request to go ahead and leave in the full allocation at this time in case there's something that we've missed or we've rounded improperly. We've laid that out so that you can see each of the impacts to those divisions, and we will then make those modifications to the individual affected department. Following that, in the general fund, we received a new initiative modification from the Superior Court. And included in their request was to add back initially a 0.6, or actually add a new part-time commissioner and related staff. Subsequent to the preliminary hearing, or the preliminary budget discussion, the court would like to increase that to a full-time position. The impact to accommodate that request is $28,000 to the general fund. There is also an offsetting cost that they would fund through their Fill the Gap supplementary monies. But again, the bottom line general fund would be an increase overall of $28,000. The one additional item related to that, normally for new initiatives, we request that the departments hold the implementation of new initiatives until you've adopted the final budget. But the court, if you so choose to accommodate this initiative, they would prefer that this initiative go into effect earlier in July, near the 1st of July, so that they could go forward with that, get the position filled, and move on. Again, we've allocated for the entire budget year. When we budget, we didn't budget, from only August forward. We went ahead and included the full amount. The other modifications essentially include the routine purchase order rollovers from the current year to next year. That happens each of the years. We have some projects that will not be finished, or certain purchases that will not be finished prior to the end of the year. For the general fund, that totals $360,992 that we would be moving from expense for the current year to next year. And in other funds, which includes a little bit in waterways, the road department, the engineering department, traffic control, erase, vehicle use fund. The vehicle use fund actually has the most of the rollover, that amounts to $732,000. But in total, in all of those other funds, the rollovers are about $1.9 million that we would be moving expenses from this year to next year. And then the final amendments are just minor grant changes in total from one year to or increasing the overall bottom line in those grant funds, but they are funded with other resources. So I wanted to go over those modifications with you, and then specifically note the request from the court to, if approved, to begin that prior to the final budget. Other items that are included in this, as we previously discussed, were the left behind compensation. So that estimate for the general fund was about $1 million, and we have funds designated through the other grants and some of the special funds to also accommodate that. In regard to the implementation of the left behind monies, there are going to be some challenges to get that to actually be implemented, where we've got to go back, reevaluate the list for any changes that have happened since we initially calculated that to the actual implementation in August. So I would ask that in order to do that, specifically, there are some inequities that we can see right now that could happen in some of the elected officials' departments. So I would like to ask for your permission, if this is adopted, to work one-on-one with the department impacted or elected official impacted to make those actions so that there's equity across the board with that. In addition, the contract, we have a few contract employees. Their calculations have not been included, as I do not have the authority to do that. So it would be up to the board, if you so chose, to make any contract changes, that you could certainly include that within the tentative budget. And I would ask that if we receive that direction, that as long as we remain within the amount that we've included in the budget and can accommodate that, that you would allow that to occur as well.
Mr. Chairman, may I expand on the left behind portion?
Sure.
You know, based on the discussion that the board had previously regarding what they believe is necessary for them to be able to fulfill their duties and meet the requirements and expectations of their constituents. What we would ask the board to do based on elected official requirements, also like what Ms. Lloyd said, that there would be some instances where there's inconsistencies or maybe inequities that can be identified, is to provide me with the authority to review these items one by one, provide me with the authority to work with the Board of Supervisors and the elected officials on creating that final list. And I will enlist the assistance of our HR department and Ms. Lloyd in coming up with the final list so that we ensure that our elected officials have the tools that they believe are necessary to meet their constituent requirements.
Thank you, Mr. Hendrick.
Mr. Chairman, on this same item, I have a problem with it. We gave the authority to go ahead and do the catch-up or whatever they were calling it. This should have been done already. I mean, we should have contacted the departments. I know I put my input in and it seemed to have been ignored, and I know those other departments have the same thing too. I'm just really frustrated that this wasn't done, that we've had months on this to have this. All you have to do is call a department and say, hey, did you look at the list? Was that correct or not? And have it done. That's the only question I have.
Thank you. Supervisor Bishop, comment?
Nope.
Supervisor Angus, comment?
Kind of with Supervisor Johnson on this. You know, I can't stand that term, left behind, because it connotates that there was a big grand plan, and that's not what I believe this board gave permission to a couple of years ago. It was for some spot stuff, but you know, we gave permission, and I don't understand why this is happening either. You know, I heard from some elected officials that they were having problems, and I assumed that, you know, it was being taken care of and addressed. So, you know, I have an issue with the way the whole thing was done. And I'm not exactly sure if this is the right time for this, but I had talked about it with our county manager when it was first proposed, when I was actually at the workshop for development services. And that is the reclassification of position 10053 to a director position. And I just wanted on the record that I have a problem with that reorganizational restructure of that particular position, not because of the person or the job they're doing, because it's being restructured to be a director position, and I believe, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, that it will be the only position that is named as a director, and that director has nobody reporting to him. And I think that's kind of an insult to all the other directors who have staffs and big staffs that they have to manage. And so that is my issue with that. And it's a hefty raise.
And agreed. Mr. Chairman, may I address that?
After my comment, I've been looking at position number 10053. And I'm under the impression that it really needs to be under the county manager as a director. But in looking at the differences between the salary of the other directors and this director, it is much, much lower. And although he has no one reporting to him, he has a vast, vast responsibility. He has performed extremely well and continues to perform extremely well, so that's where that's where I will be showing my support. Okay, County Manager Hendrick, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I couldn't have said it better. We have a one-man show in that department. It's already titled a director position, but this particular position is currently reporting to a director, the Development Services Director. And it's amazing to me what just one person can accomplish and has been able to do. Just a reminder regarding Dot Foods, if it wasn't for this individual bringing that to our attention regarding the Arizona Commerce Authority and the contribution that they're making, and encouraging the board to also participate, and then helping develop all the agreements and putting that in place, and then monitoring the progress. I don't attribute the Dot Foods coming to Mojave County because of him, but I do want to recognize all of his hard work that he put forward on Dot Foods to make it happen in a reality for Mojave County. And that's one example. This individual by himself makes sure that the entire economic development website is updated. He's constantly courting other businesses and trying to get them to come to Mojave County. He's also spearheading a program to help retain businesses that are currently located in the area. In my review of this individual's performance, it's been, he's far exceeded my expectations. He has a special dimension. He's got his realty license. I can certainly...
If I could just butt in, what we need to talk about today is just general information about the position and not individual performance, because notice issues and things like that. So if we just stick to the general, the idea of moving around of positions and things and not go into the specifics of job performance and things like that, I'd urge you to stay away from that.
Thank you, Mr. Espin. I won't say anything more about the 4 companies that he's working with right now for bringing into Mojave County.
Don't say anything about that.
I won't say that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you just saved me from saying it, but thank you, and I appreciate your comments and stopping me on that. Thank you.
I guess, Mr. Chair, going on with that too, I have similar concerns of Supervisor Angus, how this one got in, but yet the left behind people didn't get in, kind of gets me. And when we're giving a increase of this amount, not saying anything about the person or anything, but sometimes if you re-advertise, maybe you get different people. I don't know if this one item could be pulled out and continued till we can actually agendize it specifically and discuss it or not, but that was all.
Thank you for your comment. Supervisor Bishop? Comment?
No.
Any other comment?
I like that idea from Supervisor Johnson, if we can go ahead and just take it out and maybe just discuss it further. What am I supposed to do?
Nope, not for me.
Oh, second, looking for a second?
So wait, that was in the form of a motion? So that was my motion, to take it out and then to approve the tentative budget minus this issue, or just you have to start with this particular issue?
I would suppose you would start with this particular issue, is that correct?
No, if we're talking about the details of the particular employee, then we've got to agendize it.
No, that's what we're talking about.
I know, but
This
I'm
line
just saying, in general, if we are, then we'd have to agendize it that way to give the employee the opportunity to be able to participate. But if we're not, if we're just talking in general terms about the position and not about the employee, the performance, or things like that, then we would not need to agendize it accordingly like that.
And, Mr. Chairman, this budget includes restructuring this position underneath to report to the county manager, so it would be integral to the board budget discussion. So if you wanted to remove that, there would have to be a motion by the board and an approval by the board to do so, I would assume.
Well, maybe we can wrap it up right now, if this question can be answered. Are there any other directors in Mojave County who have no one reporting to them?
No.
Okay. Then I would like to take out this position, take out this line item from the tentative budget to be agendized for the next meeting for discussion and possible action.
Okay, that's your motion?
Yes.
Okay. I assume.
Second.
Second? Further discussion? The only comment that I wish to make is that I think it's very late in the time of trying to put our budgets together to address it at this point. I certainly will not be supporting your motion, but with that, I'll call for the questions. Any
Wait.
further questions?
Could I ask a question?
Certainly.
Okay, the motion is to remove this particular line item from the budget,
From the tentative budget.
from the tentative budget.
Next meeting. And will we have time to put it back into the final budget after we,
Yes. And this is for discussion, or?
well, discussion or possible
We're currently
action?
discussing.
I defer to Ms. Lloyd. Do you know?
Yes,
I think
yes,
the
there's
answer
time.
is, as long as you have we're not dropping the budget numbers, so we're basically just voting on a amount of money, and we can still, as long as we can't go over that, but we can
Right.
certainly go under it if we want, but that amount of money's still in there, even though
Right, and it can go back into the final budget after the discussion.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Angus, there's sufficient monies in the tentative budget recommendation that will allow the board to have considerable latitude up into and until adopting the final budget. So the answer is yes.
Okay, so the motion is to take this line item out, but there is money there already set aside for this
Right.
particular line item.
That is correct.
Yes.
Any further discussion?
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
No.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Oh, thanks.
I'm sorry, we didn't hear your vote.
I said, oh, thanks.
Don't abstain.
No, I'm not abstaining. I'm struggling.
May I say something to Supervisor Wakamoto that I think maybe she doesn't understand? This is just going to be discussed. It can be put back as is. I just want some clarification in a public meeting about this particular thought process to restructure this position, that's all. And then it will go back in some way into the final budget.
And I certainly wouldn't want to interfere with your vote, but I'll be voting no.
Okay. That did not help me out at all. Thank you very much.
this is to restructure a position that exists. And to discuss the reason for restructuring it, is that what we're doing?
Yes, yes. Yes.
Could you help
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yeah. Okay, she voted.
Yes.
And Chairman Watson.
No.
Motion carries 3-2. I do have a question, though. We did vote on that one line item, but we have not approved the rest of that.
Correct. We have to
Okay.
go to the tentative budget, of which I'll be briefly discussing after I hear from Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, sir. The only thing that was mentioned in there is moving this commissioner up now to full-time.
Yes.
Just so everybody understands, when they put a commissioner in, they're basically filling an elected position. And they are on the retirement system or the new plan they have now, and it just kind of snuck in as, oh, we need somebody else, instead of, they go by population to get the amount of judges they need. Commissioners is a sneaky way of getting another judge without going to the election of the people. Just my own thought, we have commissioners that have 20 years in. I don't think it should be a full-time position, or if it's a full-time position, maybe not for the same person, because you're basically circumventing the election process by having somebody fill it out, where my opinion would be if an attorney wants to do it for an appointment for 4 years or something to get on his resume, but when you're building somebody into a retirement system, it just bothers me, and I see now that we're adding another commissioner on full-time, just my complaint.
Mr. Hendricks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, if you recall at previous meeting where we discussed the budgets, there was a lengthy presentation that was provided by our presiding Judge Gertler about comparing his workload with other counties, and it was fairly stark, the differences on how much work, how much caseload our actual court systems have as compared to Yavapai or the Coconino's or down in specifically Maricopa County. And I believed it made an impression on the board, so much so that we entered into a discussion with Judge Gertler afterwards. And not that we fully funded an extra judge and staff, but we found a way and to actually hear his concerns and try to address them and allow us to try to come up with a proposal to present to the board that would have a minimum amount of impact on our general fund, and it was a partnering that they would utilize court funds for the majority of the request. And I'm probably not relaying this as eloquently as I should, but I believe Kip Anderson is in the audience, and he could certainly answer some questions for the board. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson, welcome aboard.
Good morning, Chairman Watson, Supervisor Johnson. Thanks for the opportunity to come down. Presiding Judge Gertler is down in Tucson. I wish it was in Phoenix because I have to drive down there myself, but otherwise he'd be here. It's our annual judicial conference this week. At any rate, we certainly want to be upfront and clear. We're not trying to sneak anything in, and you're correct, Supervisor Johnson, as population grows, as things change, constitutionally we can add another judicial division. That has to be approved by the board. It has to be also approved by the state. But what happens generally throughout the state, and has happened here in Mojave County over the years, is as workload increases, we evaluate it, we try to manage it as appropriately as we can. As you know, a few years ago, we had a part-time commissioner on board that helped over at the jail, that helped reduce some of the workload dropped a little bit. We tried to take that back internally and manage it. but we've been watching our caseloads go up the last 2 years. I've got more current figures for this current year, and projections so far, if it continues on, we'll see significant increases again in all of our major case types. Our juvenile workload is increasing, particularly in the dependency area. We could see numbers that will be 50 to 60 cases higher than they've been at our peak. And that was 2 years ago when the state put in some extra money to try to address the issue. So we've got continued workload issues that we're trying to address. Judge Gertler came, we thought we could do it with a part-time commissioner. The farther we got along with the process, it just made more sense to make it a full-time position to really affect proper improvements and help with the workload. I know our criminal caseloads, that's probably our largest impact, and have been going up steady every year. There's talk of a second grand jury that will put additional workload on all of us. So that's why we're requiring or asking for another full-time commissioner. Population's going to continue to grow. Yavapai County has 3 commissioners. Yuma County has 3 commissioners. Maricopa County has, 100 commissioners. They're authorized to have 130 full-time judges. They have another 100 commissioners. Our numbers certainly aren't anything like that, but the demand is there. So again, we want to be transparent. We want to let you know that's what the demand is. We've gone to County Administrator Hendricks and Coral, and I think maybe Judge Gertler's even had some conversations with each of you. So we feel it's necessary, but we respect your opinion as you evaluate the budget, but we're hopeful that we can move forward in that direction. I know you're going to zing me with something, Supervisor Johnson.
Well,
I'm not sure I'm ready, but...
I always look forward to you coming down, not that I invited you down. It was
Sorry.
But, it's the whole setup that bothers me. I mean, the judges have no problem going down to get the lobby for pay raises every year, but they can't seem to work out the number of judges that we need, and I think the commissioners is just circumvents the system. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
And especially when they stay long enough to retire, I mean, because now people are going in front of a commissioner who they've never actually had a chance to vote for or probably even know their name on that. And while I realize that these other counties have a lot of commissioners and that, but that goes to their budget, and we try to keep our budget down, and obviously this 28,000 isn't going to hurt anything till next year when you come back and say you're not going to fill the extra money and we have to cover it all. But well, it just keeps adding to us, and then our budget, we're not raising the taxes or anything else. The pie's getting pretty hard to slice many more ways. I just wanted to point it out to the other members because sometimes we have some new ones that might not know the role of the commissioner or how they do it. That was all I was bringing up, Kip. 28,000 isn't a whole lot of money, but once again, you snuck another one in the door. I can give you credit on that.
Well, and again, we're certainly not trying to sneak anything in, and we have multiple conversations with county finance, and just on the question of elections, there's certainly a concern there. But we have a committee that, with members of the public, we try to vet who we would hire. We ask for public comment. So, it's not as open as an election, but we try to give opportunities so that people can give input on who the commissioner position is, who that person would be selected by Judge Gertler. And he certainly reaches out amongst the community and talks to people as well and gets feedback. So we try to do, gather information there as well.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I believe that there is no motion on the floor for the tentative budget, so
That is correct.
I will make an attempt to pull this together. I'd like to make a motion to adopt the FY 18-19 tentative budget with modifications that include the part-time commissioner and staff, and for that to start the initiative early.
Correct.
My second point would be to include contract employees to receive the 5% increase that others will be receiving. My third point would be to have Mr. Hendricks, our county manager, to address those people that have been left behind, to make sure that there's no inequities to the impact for those employees, and give him the authority to do that. I believe I've covered most of those points. Am I missing one?
Chairman Watson, Mr. Anderson noted that you had mentioned the commissioner was part-time rather than full-time.
I'm
And I don't know
sorry.
if you intended to do that or whether that was
Full-time, and as I understand it, that's being funded by Fill the Gap?
partially with general fund and the balance with the Fill the Gap.
Right, okay. So I'll change it to full-time.
Okay.
I believe I've covered those items that are my concern that you and I discussed earlier.
Yes.
Thank you. And that's my motion.
And if you could also include setting the date for the public hearing for the final budget. That's part 2 of that motion, is setting a public
And
hearing.
part 2 to set the, for August 6, 2018 for the final budget.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
No.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
And Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
Thank you very much. On to item number 52, approve the appointment of Charlotte Wells to the Mojave County Employment Merit Commission representing District 1,
Motion to
the
approve.
finest district in Mojave County,
Second.
effective July 21st, 2018 for a 4-year term. We have a motion and a second. Questions?
So moved.
There being none, Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
And Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 53, our last item, discussion, possible action, and that's to authorize Supervisor Gene Bishop of District 4 to represent Mojave County at NACO's annual conference as the designated county voting delegate.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. There being no further discussion, Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Angus? Yes. Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
I guess I'll abstain.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
And Chairman Watson?
Yes, and thank you, and have a good trip, Supervisor Bishop. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our meeting for today. Thank you very much. Meeting closed. Thank you.